My name's Catherine.
And I'm Bryce.
And we're here from Game Zombie TV. And everyone, we're here with the team from the Molasses Flood, which is an indie game studio developing The Flame in the Flood. It was a Kickstarter roguelike that has surpassed its Kickstarter goal by over $75,000.
Okay, first question we have for you guys is, can you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do for the game?
Yep, I'm Forrest, and I am the lead designer on the game, and so that means I end up writing a lot of spreadsheets and documents and whatnot, and doing a lot of scripting, like building UI and interactions and that kind of thing.
Hey, I'm Bryn. I'm an engineer, and I'm one half of the programming team here. Basically, I argue about who's better, Picard or Captain Kirk. I would say Picard.
I guess I won't argue with you. So could you guys tell us a little bit about The Flame in the Flood? Like, what's the game like? What's the story?
Yeah, so the game is, as you just said in your introduction, it's a roguelite, we'll call it, in which you travel down a procedurally generated river in sort of a southern environment. It's really a game about survival. It's about surviving against the elements and against yourself, basically, like against the frailties of the human body and the weather and whatnot. So it's a game in which you're always trying to find water and food, and you're trying to stay warm and stay ahead of the rain, and you're just sort of constantly moving forward. And it's procedurally generated, so it's different every single time you play it.
Okay, and how did you guys come up with the concept for this game?
It's a pretty organic process to come up with a concept for a game. Like, I've never sort of encountered a situation where you just sort of have this idea whole cloth and are just like, okay, we've got this magic great game idea and we're just going to build it. It started from the idea of, a couple ideas. One was we wanted to do something about survival in general. We wanted to do something about a journey. We wanted to make it, rather than about sitting down and building a camp or a base, we wanted you to be sort of constantly moving. And we also wanted it aesthetically to be sort of a living embodiment of the work of Scott Sinclair, who's our art director, who's, in addition to having been an art director on a lot of really beautiful games, is an accomplished illustrator and painter. So we really wanted to do something that was very, very much like a living version of his work.
Okay. So in the trailer, these sorts of condition status messages kept popping up, like cold or tired. So how does that affect the gameplay?
Yeah, actually, Bryn could take this. He's doing a lot of the work, sort of the back-end work behind it to make it actually happen.
Yeah, so there's a number of different things, we call them afflictions, that can happen to you, where if you fall off your raft, you can get wet, or if you're wet for a while, you can get too cold, at which point you either need to dry off and get by a fire, or you could come down with some illness.
So you could get hypothermic, for example.
Yeah, you could get hypothermic, or you could eat something bad and that would end up giving you cholera or some other horrible disease, which will then affect your ability. Your stamina, you can see later in the video how she starts really having a hard time walking forward. And that's all based on these afflictions taking your health down over time.
Yeah, so the sicker you get, the faster you'll get fatigued, and the more fatigued you are, the slower you're going to move, and then you need to rest, or you need to find a remedy of some sort, or craft a remedy. So we've been looking at a lot of sort of medicinal and edible plants that one can find out in the wild. So the idea is you can find a plant that might help resolve an issue, or you might need to, make penicillin or something like that if you've got a bacterial infection and you need to deal with it that way. Otherwise, these things have a tendency to escalate to the point where you die.
Yeah, Forrest has been reading the most ridiculous survival books. What was that, urban survival you were reading?
Yeah, Tom Brown's Guide to Urban and Suburban Survival, which is basically, it's a book that's kind of it's essentially a handbook for the exact scenarios that the sort of extremist survivalists that you might see out in the world would use. And it's kind of when society crumbles, this is how you can, use old newspapers and pipes that you ripped from old houses and stuff to, survive, basically.
That's interesting. And when we were watching the trailer, one of the things that caught our eye was the art style, and it feels like a storybook. What made you choose to go with that type of art style, and where did you pull your inspiration from?
I mean, we pull inspiration from a lot of places. Like I said, initially, we were looking at, Sync's work specifically. Oh, Bryn is actually pulling a piece. He's trying to pull one of the paintings off the wall. Yeah, he's gonna wheel it over here. Oh. So yeah, like here's a painting by Scott. So one of the big influences was just his work and sort of all the collection of influences and illustrators and whatnot that he's looked at. We have this huge directory of reference images that range from things like the paintings of I always get this guy's name wrong, David Hockney, who did like these beautiful flat paintings of these really elaborate trees, to photos of just sort of the southern bayou and like weird old docks and that kind of thing, to we've looked at a lot of like classic hand painted typography. I'm watching Bryn right now, like trying to rehang the painting and not destroy it.
It's not quite straight,
but yeah, we try and sort of pull from all over, tons of influences and whatnot, just weird textures that we see on different things out in the world. Like Sync is constantly taking pictures of everything on his phone and Instagramming it, ranging from tree bark to, a brick wall in an old mill. So, I guess we pull from a lot of different sources, and it just it all kind of feeds into the whole in the end.
So what I thought was really amazing is that your team only has 6 people on it. And I also saw from your bios that 3 of you guys worked on BioShock together. How did you kind of come together?
Yeah, actually, I mean, in total, 5 of the 6 of us had worked on BioShock Infinite. So that's kind of, we had all worked together in that way, so we all knew each other, and that's how we came together. Bryn is the one exception. He was not on Infinite. He was at Harmonix at the time.
Yeah, so I worked on all of the Rock bands and Guitar Hero 2. But I did work, I am like old school Irrational, so I worked on the original demo for the first BioShock.
Yeah, Bryn was also there at the time of like Freedom Force, right? Freedom Force versus the Third Reich, or just...
Yeah, versus the Third Reich. I worked on a game called The Lost at Irrational for about 5 years, and it never came out. It was kind of painful.
Yeah, I think you can see write-ups and stuff about it here and there at this point. It did eventually come out in India.
In India, yeah.
Really weirdly. I think Irrational's distanced themselves from that. But yeah. Bryn worked with Sync, the art director, way back in those earlier days at Irrational and at Harmonix. Did you ever overlap with him?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so in Harmonix. So we knew Bryn from that, and it was pretty easy to sort of come together when we were all in the town in which there was, no work for us, and we all got laid off. And we did convince Bryn to, leave his job and come, work for no money.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we sort of all knew each other from having worked together in the past.
Good. And what was it like coming from such a AAA studios like Irrational Games to working on a small 6-person team?
It's it's like the same problems, just on a smaller scale in many ways. Like when we make decisions, there needs to be way more economy now, just because we have the capabilities of 6 people sort of sweating over a problem together. We don't have the ability to sort of spend our way through a problem. We're not going to be able to, hire an actor to do, a pickup, or, get like a mocap studio in LA to, get some animation for us in a couple days, or, ever, because we can't pay for that, once.
Yeah, it turns into interesting discussions, like when we were doing that video that you guys watched that we used for Kickstarter. Every one of the animations that are in the video are going to end up being in the game, because we don't have time to just make video-only animations. So we're making sure that nearly everything that came out in that video is going to end up shipping.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we need to focus way more on the economy of everything we do, and sort of make every movement count in a way. Like, another big difference is just we're essentially I mean, even the Kickstarter is huge and really helpful, but we're living off very little individually and largely basically living off savings. So we don't have kind of a long runway leading out. We can't take forever to make a game. We need to be really really choosy about the decisions we make, to make sure that we can do it in a timely fashion, because we need to eat and we need to pay ourselves within a shorter amount of time, and we don't have sort of a big publishing apparatus over our heads that will we can go to and say, like, listen, we need 6 more months, can you keep paying us for that long? Like, we are we're the end of that. The buck stops with us, so we just need to be really like I said, just way more economy in what we choose to do.
Okay, so what do you guys think is the most standout element of this game? Did you guys put the heaviest focus into the art, the music? Like, what do you think is going to resonate with the player?
I mean, I think the art and the music are two obvious, like, big ones for sure. We're super lucky to be working with such a great musician as Chuck, and to have such a talented artist as Sink on the team. I mean, I think that's going to be a huge part of the experience and a huge part that differentiates us, in terms of, like, there are a lot of survival games out there. I think another sort of big differentiator is the specific combination of traveling while surviving. Like, there's a lot of roguelikes that are about sort of, going to the end of the dungeon. And there's a lot of survival games that are about, sort of building up a base, but I don't think there's a lot out there where you sort of see this mix of, surviving off the land, but sort of constantly moving forward, which we think is actually a pretty unique, but also fairly accurate depiction of survival. Like, I don't know if you watch much, like, Survivor Man or Dual Survival or
Naked and Afraid.
Naked and Afraid are the schlockiest of survival shows. But in just about any survival situation, like, if you're lost in the woods, your goal isn't to build a home there, and live forever and make a sustainable, green farm. Your goal is generally to get back to civilization or society. So, you're always sort of, if you're lost in the wilderness, you're heading downhill, right? Because you're going to hit water, and water leads to roads, and roads lead to civilization, and civilization is health, and so on and so forth. So, I hope that sense of a survival game in which you're always moving, but is also, like, sort of a smaller bite survival game. Like, this isn't a game where, one go at it is going to take you 40 hours. Like, we think once people are good at it, much like FTL or Spelunky or something like that, you'll be able to be able to complete the game in a sitting. But at the same time, it should take you a lot of time to hit a point where you're good enough at the game and you understand the mechanics and you understand how to survive, so that you can actually reach the end. Much like FTL or Spelunky, which are essentially, like, Spelunky's what, a 2-hour game, FTL 3 or 4. But people put,
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, people put. I know. I just reached the capital ship. What is it? In FTL the other day.
I wouldn't know.
But you end up putting hundreds of hours into these games, because they're very challenging. Like, they're really hardcore games that take a lot of learning and experience. So the hope is that there's, like, coupled with the art and music, there's this really kind of unique collection of gameplay that's familiar enough for people that they can sort of immediately understand it, but is a bit of a different combination than things we've seen in the past. Okay, and speaking of Chuck Reagan, like, how did that come about, getting him to do the whole soundtrack for the game? It's related to the 6 people question. We don't have a lot of resources, so if you don't, you go with your friends. You go with people you know. And Sink has actually done album covers for Chuck for years, like going way back to like 20 years, I guess.
Could be close now, yeah.
Yeah, so Chuck was previously in a band called Hot Water Music, and Sink had done most of their album covers going back to their college days. So, they're old friends, they know each other really well. And when we started out, we were looking at different artists. We're looking at a lot of musicians that were doing sort of more traditional style music, with maybe a bit more modern twist. We're looking at a lot of sort of country music and bluegrass and acoustic music, and Sync had suggested like, hey, I got this friend who's actually a super talented world-class musician who's doing exactly the kind of stuff we're talking about. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're super lucky to have that connection because we were able to go to him and, you know, talk to him about the idea and what we wanted to do, and he was just like, in his charming way, like his speaking voice is like his singing voice. He was like, yeah, man, this is what my music's all about. This is great. This is perfect. Like, he was just super on board from day one when we started talking about, you know, like a river journey and survival. He's kind of hard to get in touch with sometimes because he's basically either on tour or like unreachable because he's out in the wilderness fishing.
So the main character is Scout and her dog Aesop. Were they inspired by anyone or anything?
I guess the thing is, you know, we're dog people. Like, Bryn's dog person, I'm a dog person. A couple of the pieces that we have hanging up on the wall of Sync's that Bryn didn't rip off the wall are of his dog in one way or another, in tributes to. So, you know, we thought like a dog companion was like a really good idea.
And originally it was a game mechanic.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted some kind of animal or something to be able to hold on to some bit of your inventory. So in a permadeath game, you wouldn't start completely from the beginning, or there'd be a little more strategy.
Yep.
Like, so whatever you put on your dog or whatever you end up with again.
Yeah. So it started out as like, well, do you put something in a raft? Do you have like a magic chest or something? That's always at the start. And then we thought like, oh, what if you just had a dog with a backpack? You know, like, and there were even different versions. I think the first version was actually a squirrel, like a little
squirrel with a backpack.
There was a squirrel with a giant hiking pack on it, and it was really funny. But, you know, tonally we kind of moved away from that level of goofiness in the game and moved more towards like a little more of a somber or darker tone. And then, you know, all these ideas roll around and Sync just starts building concepts and whatnot. And he made this concept of this old dog, and he found the Aesop's fable of the old hound, which is essentially a story of this old dog who, you know, fails in a hunt and is scolded by the master, and the dog is just sort of pleading like, you know, don't punish me for what I am, praise me for what I've been, because he's like an old dog at this point and isn't all that effective as a hunter anymore, but he was a good dog and a faithful dog. So we thought that was like sort of a really beautiful little story. And like a really good embodiment of the sort of companion we wanted to be, sort of the wizened old creature. And Scout herself was, again, it was just sort of riffing on different characters. You know, we knew we needed a character, and Sync just started banging out concepts for different ideas. And we actually had posted a blog post maybe a couple posts ago at blog.themolassesflood.com. And he had sent out an image, and I had just put up, you know, his first concept that he sent our way of Scout that is essentially the Scout that we went with. We just saw her and we're like, yep, okay, winner, we got it. And, you know, we've just gone from there.
Okay, and will this game be making a release like solely on Steam, or how do you plan on distributing the game?
We're planning on Steam very initially. We're also planning on the Humble store. We've got a lot of people ask for DRM-free versions, and we're happy to support that. We've spoken with GOG, or Good Old Games, a bit. They don't clear games for release until much closer, so I'm like 99% sure we'll be on GOG as well. And, you know, probably, I don't know, everything.
Everything we can be.
Yeah, essentially. But right now we're shooting for PC and Mac initially. We do have a stretch goal for the PS4 in our Kickstarter campaign, which still has about 48 hours on the clock. So we'll see if we hit it. If not, you know, it's still something we'd like to do, but it wouldn't be in our short-term plan. It would be something down the line. Like longer term, we'd love to be able to support as many platforms as possible and just sort of get the game into as many people's hands as possible. But, you know, we're 6 people, and we can only do, you know, we can only sign up for so much.
The last thing we wanted to do is overpromise on Kickstarter. This has happened a few times.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
trying to be
for
careful
sure.
about that.
There's certainly been some cautionary tales about that, and the more platforms we support, the more work it is for this guy and Damian, the other engineer, in particular. So yeah, that's the plan initially. All digital, as many digital platforms as possible, and then we'll go from there.
Do you guys have a tentative release date, and will the soundtrack be available separately for purchase?
Yep, the soundtrack will definitely be available. We're shooting for late spring, early summer as a release date. We do have anybody who backs on Kickstarter, we're giving a month early, so we're just pinning down exactly when we're shooting for that. But yeah, our plan right from the get-go was a project that we could do in a year. And we started around June, so that should give you an idea about where we're planning on landing. But video games, so who knows? I'm sure there'll be a possibility of, some movement there as we, get further along and figure out exactly, what we need to do to finish it up. And, one thing that we're very committed to, and this is a big, lesson from all the work we've done in the past, is you don't release something until you're really proud of it, until it's, super good, until you really are happy with it and are ready to get it out in the hands of people. So, we're going to make sure that it's whatever the date ends up being, it's going to be great by that point, and we're not going to release it if it isn't.
Yep. Thanks so much for doing this interview with us. I remember we were talking offline. You said that you were going to have some sort of Twitch stream or something planned for the end of the Kickstarter, if you want to go into that.
Oh yeah, so on Thursday night, probably around 5:30, 6 o'clock EST, we're going to be doing a Twitch stream for the last few hours of the campaign. And the idea is we're heading out to a friend's place. He's got a big backyard. We're going to be streaming from there, where we're having a campfire, and we're going to be trying to cook up some survival foods and whatnot. The forecast is that it's supposed to be really bad.
Yeah, there's a good chance I might not make it through.
Yeah, it's gonna be cold. It's gonna be rainy potentially. So if that's the case, it'll be less fun for us and probably more fun for people watching as they watch me try and fake my way through being a survivor out in the wild as I succumb to hypothermia over the course of 3 hours in my backyard. But yeah, we're hoping to be the first Twitch stream of a campfire.
Yeah, it can't be common.
Yeah, maybe the first Twitch stream of a dismemberment if I can take my thumb off while cutting wood. We'll see. But yeah, that's the plan. Thursday night we're going to be doing that.
All right, well, thank you again for your time. It's been awesome speaking with you guys. So again, this has been Catherine.
This is Bryce.
All right, and we're here from Game Zombie TV. So to everyone watching, thank you, and thank you again for speaking with us.
No problem. Thanks.